Hate Week is coming to a close, and it's time to preview Iowa State. A breakdown, offense, defense. What's it going to take for the Hawkeyes to get the win today? Locked On Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Here we go, and we are approaching game time in Iowa City. A 2:30 kickoff at Kinnick Stadium as the Hawkeyes welcome in Iowa State. So let's talk about this and really break things down. We've been talking about some different angles. As you everydayers know, I like to come up with different theories, different ideas, and the way this thing should play out. And let's go down the direction and kind of look at this on a blow-by-blow basis, starting with some of the storylines coming into the game. And probably the biggest one of this week is the injuries from Iowa State. Caleb Bacom, their starting linebacker, being out. Just how decimated that linebacker group is. And they're going to be playing a lot of young guys. They're done some evolution of what they're looking to do defensively. A lot of talk this summer, though we didn't see it last week against North Dakota, about them using more of a four-man front as opposed to a three-man front. We saw in the first half a 3-4 defense was pretty good against the run for Iowa as they basically stood up one of their linebackers on the line of scrimmage and played that direction. Does that lead to some scheming and some game planning that Iowa State does? So it's a cat and mouse game, and I really like that part of it. But a lot of times you will see, this rivalry game where you can tell that Iowa State's fired up for it. They're ready for it. And, it's going to be a 4-quarter game. I don't want to say it's been trepidation, but watching the game from them last week, watching what they are, there certainly isn't that quiet confidence that you get from time to time for Iowa State. Now, sometimes it's bravado for no reason, but I go the other direction. And for the Hawkeye fans listening right now, don't take too much out of what we saw a week ago. We just have so much history in this game that shows us that what we saw last week out of Iowa State really doesn't matter. You go back to just a couple of years ago, and you go back to the game in Kinnick Stadium in 2022. That was a team coming into this one that really not many people gave a shot. Iowa looked to be a very solid team. Spencer Petras, the hope was that he was going to take another step forward offensively. We know that didn't happen, but that was the hope at the time. Iowa State was coming in after being preseason top 10. Yeah, Iowa State was preseason top 10 in 2021. They lose Brock Purdy and Breece Hall, Wazarike, and Charlie Kohler, Mike Rose, and Jay Kummel, and Chase Allen, and Mevis, their kicker. I mean, they lost a ton off that team. Now, we know that the Iowa State team in 2022 was not good, but they beat Iowa. They came into Kinnick and won at 10-7. And they had that long, sustained drive that proved to be the difference in the football game, the 99-yard drive that was the difference in the victory. Though Iowa had an opportunity late to tie it up, they needed a little help to even get that. It was just one of those days. Go back before that, 2014. Iowa State starts off the season 0-2. They're blown out by North Dakota State. Didn't lose to North Dakota State. Were blown out by North Dakota State. They're 0-2. What do? They come into Kinnick and win 20-17. 2007, there's another one. They come in 0-2. Lost to Kent State. Lost to UNI. Think of that. Kent State and UNI. They beat Iowa 15-13. Iowa State has won games in this series without scoring touchdowns. They almost did it 2 years ago. So, again, don't take too much away from, Iowa State didn't look very good last week. This is a team that still returned the most production in college football at the FBS level. This is a team that returned 19 starters from a year ago. They didn't look great last week. There's no doubt about it. But we overreact a little bit too much, and history shows us in this game we can't overreact to what we've seen before. The likelihood is Iowa State is going to look a whole lot better than they did last Saturday against North Dakota. I don't think there's any doubt about it. So how does it play out? Well, it starts for me when I'm looking at this and looking at this matchup. I think it'll come down to, if we're going to get a 4-quarter football game, it'll come down to the right arm. No, not of Cade McNamara, of Rocco Becht. If Rocco Becht has this game in his hands and he's able to make plays with their talented wide receivers, and that's another thing that Iowa State has. Iowa State has, in my mind, 2 advantages in this game. Quarterback, I give a slight edge to Rocco Becht over Cade McNamara. Now, if we see the Cade McNamara we saw in the second half of the game and late in the first half, we're having a different conversation. But overall, I think Rocco Becht not only has the upside, but has shown enough growth going back to what we saw from September a year ago that he gets a slight edge. The other one that's the major edge is the wide receiver position. You got 2 guys that were at Big 12 Football Media Day. Jaden Higgins, he's the big guy. Got the size, got the frame, got the speed. He is your big prototypical wide receiver. And then you get the little guy in Jalen Noel, who he's fast. He makes plays. He had the first catch of the season for them in traffic. He just knows what he's doing out there. But that's not all. They have depth at the position. They brought in Eli Green from North Dakota State. Iowa was heavily involved and interested in getting his services. He goes to Iowa State. They got Isaiah Alston from Army. Yes, it's Army wide receiver. I get it. Going from the flex bone to running, but still a guy that certainly other programs in the country wanted. They got a young guy in Benny Nagoye that they really like. The wide receiver group is good. It's deep, but those top 2 are as good of a 1-2 punch as you're going to find in the Big 12. So that's what's coming in. Now, those are the advantages to Iowa State. Now we go the other direction, and they start to stack up. And they really start to stack up for Iowa. The other part of the Iowa State offense, and why I believe their game plan should be to stay away from playing bully ball, trying to play the Iowa style, trying to out-Iowa. It's been a problem for them. Matt Campbell only has 1 win in this series in his 7 appearances. And the reason? I think too many times he's trying to out-Iowa. You can't do that. It hasn't worked. So instead of doing that, you're going to have to get a little uncomfortable. They would have to do things that they don't want to do. How do you beat Iowa? You dink, you dunk, you move the ball down the field very slowly. Make the makeables. Don't get off target. Don't get off kilter. No 2nd and 12s. No 3rd and 8s. Take the 3, the 4-yard hitches and swings and get the ball out quickly and do that, and then take a couple of shots up the field. I think that would be the best course of action if I'm Iowa State. That's the game plan. I'm using my screen game. I'm using that as my running game against this Iowa defense. They're just too good. I mean, the Iowa defense is just too good to think that you're going to be able to get them completely out of sorts and be able to do it for long, sustained drives throughout the course of the game. In order to do that, you have to take what is there. You're not running against this front. Not with that Iowa State offensive line. And that's another component when we're talking about that side of the football. When Iowa State has the football, that offensive line last week did not look very good. Jalen Travis was supposed to be their big addition out of the transfer portal. Huge dude. Ivy League kid. Another one that a lot of people wanted. He goes to Iowa State. He's hurt. He practiced this week. We'll see if he goes. I think the likelihood is small. And if he does go, I don't know how good he's going to be. So you have that. And it's an offensive line that seemingly every single year has trouble. Now you're going up against the middle with Aaron Graves and Y.A. Black. And Y.A. Black is going to occupy 2 blockers at a time, sometimes 3. He's just so good. He is a huge man, and he does such a great job. It's not a fun one, playing the nose tackle position, the defensive tackle position at Iowa. It's about gap integrity. It's about doing the dirty work. It's about occupying that space, and then you allow the guys behind you to make plays. And he does it as well as Iowa's had, doing that role in the scheme. And that allows Aaron Graves to go out and get 3 sacks. That's going to allow Deontay Craig to make plays. Brian Allen, I thought not only did he look good on the sack, throughout the course of the game, he looked like he belonged. And when you add that depth to the rotation on the defensive line against this Iowa State offensive line, now we're in business. But as we know with Iowa football, there's never questions about the defense, or at least rarely are there questions about the defense. The offense, on the other hand, That's another one. We'll talk about the Iowa offense against the Iowa State defense. Plus, we'll take a look at some of the keys to the game. We'll do that as we roll through. It's the ultimate preview, Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. As a small business owner, I know how difficult it is to find these people. Time is money. And when you're out there looking through resumes, trying to figure things out, it can be completely overwhelming. I've dealt with it before, and I'm sure you have as well. The great thing is LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps find professionals and hire them that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, you might not have the time or the resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Trent Condon back with you once again here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. And thank you for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button while you're watching. If you're listening on the audio side, on the podcast side of things, 5-star reviews. Greatly appreciate all of you for helping us out with that as we work to build these numbers up and approaching 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. A big thank you to all of you. All right, let's go to the other side of the football. And this remains the concern for Iowa. Yes, the second half last week was outstanding. We saw Cade McNamara get in a rhythm. We talked about late in the first half how seems like he was starting to find it a little bit. Another thing that I love that we haven't talked about this week is a couple of different times they went tempo. They went quick, got up to the line, got the play in quickly. Not only that, but just getting the play in quicker than we're used to. Now, a component of that is a new communication system that you have where one of the members of the staff are allowed to be in the helmet and talking to the quarterback all the way down until there's 15 seconds left on the play clock. So you have that component to it as well. I think that's something that helped getting things in and just being able to see exactly what's out there. And that communication was certainly key. But that aside, let's get into this here. And when you look at Cade McNamara and the quarterback play that we saw a week ago, it's not a mirage. I don't believe. Yes, it was a tired Illinois State team, a team from the FCS playing with less scholarships than what Iowa has, a team that is built for the MVC, not for the Big Ten. I get all those things. But you saw a guy that was not just making the ridiculous throws, right? And those are throws I'm sure Cade McNamara also understands and also realizes he's not going to be able to make against Iowa State. He's not going to be able to try to make those throws against Ohio State or Nebraska or Wisconsin. He knows that. The second touchdown to Reese Vandersee, even the throw to Ortworth. But he was in a rhythm. And Cade McNamara, one of the knocks at him, even in his great season at Michigan, leading them to the first Big Ten title in 17 years, the knock against him that season was he wouldn't take shots down the field. He was Charlie Checkdown. He'd make the makeables. He'd make the simple play that was in front of him. He'd make the easy reads, but he wasn't a playmaker. He wasn't a facilitator, at least not enough for what Michigan was going for. And J.J. McCarthy obviously was that guy, and we saw what happened from there. If Cade McNamara is taking those shots, stretching things out, opening up this offense a little bit more, they can be dynamic. I did see some, I don't want to say concerns, but at least left you wondering on the offensive line up front. And Caleb Johnson on the touchdown runs that he had, obviously outstanding. I love the play call and that little flip out to the outside and then just shooting forward straight up the seam. up for the touchdown on the first run from Caleb Johnson, in for 6 on that one. That's something that we saw Minnesota run, was it 2 years ago? Just felt like they were running that play over and over and over again. And it worked incredibly well as they racked up a ton of rushing yards that day. Just finding that hole, finding that crease, and boom, you're gone in the zone blocking scheme. I think that's something that can work, and I think that's going to be a tenet here. An exciting part about this offense coming up this week is they were so vanilla a week ago against Illinois State. We saw things, we saw shifting. We talked about the numbers as they were over 50% of shifts and formation changes during the course of the game. They were the lowest in FBS football a year ago at under 25% per offensive snap. So that was a big increase and a big change, yet it felt like they weren't showing a ton. And there's going to be more layers and more elements to this one. Listening to quarterbacks talking about going through a scheme change, going through an evolution, a new offensive coordinator, whatever it is, they normally say until the third or fourth game, you're still working on install. You're still coming up with different things and different factors that you can do in order to make it right. And if you think about that, another step, you always hear about the big jump that teams make between week 1 and week 2. I think there's still even more that they can do. I think the offensive line can be better. It was all right. It can be better, but it's on the other side. And let's talk about Iowa State and what we're going to see. Mention the defensive line for Iowa State. You start with Dominic Orange, a big guy in the middle in their 3-3-5 stack scheme. He is the nose. And up the middle, he's incredibly athletic. He's also been a playmaker at times for them. So that's a big, big part of that, what they're able to do and how they're able to maintain playing that 3-3-5 stack and hold up against the run. A big part of that is what they get from Dominique Orange. Another guy that I really like is Tyler Anadum. And he's a guy that has been around for a couple of years. He's another one that just seems to always pop out there when he's on the field. Where's number 11? Maybe that has something to do with it at the defensive end position. J.R. Singleton, solid. Just that. The intriguing also component to this defense this year is Kennard Snyder, a kid that come in from Louisiana Monroe, had a bunch of sacks there a year ago. They're really excited about him, I know, and he showed up, and I thought he had a pretty good game against North Dakota. But the other component to this is they're actually deep, and that's something that Iowa State has not had very often, certainly a defensive line, is depth and then rotational pieces. And there are another 4 or 5 names that you can talk about that certainly has gotten a lot of run. Trent Jones, Zamir Hawk is another one. You still got Joey Peterson around. Guys like that are going to either be part of the future or can be rotational pieces for them this year. And there's not the big gap that there's been in the past. So if they hold up, if that front 4, front 3, whatever it is, can at least hold up and make things difficult in the Iowa scheme. We saw what Illinois State did a week ago, cutting down on the zone running plays, cutting from behind, either a defensive end or an outside linebacker coming in and being able to get the backside. And as we've talked about for years now, that has been a problem with the zone blocking scheme. Iowa State's also done a really good job with that. And you think of some of the big plays that they had a year ago, they came inside. And you saw that a year ago in the big run by Jazzian Patterson. His big run came not on an outside zone play. It was boom, up the middle, make a guy miss, and off to the races on a short yardage play. Those are the ones that have hit because of the way that they flow and what they do on the defensive end. So we're going to see a linebacker group minus Caleb Bacon. He's out. It'll be Cooper Ebel, like him. McLaughlin, another one of their veteran guys that has over a dozen starts in his career. Looks like he's going to be out this week. It's Ebel. It's Sadowski. Brazina, their true freshman that got a lot of buzz in August camp. He might be out there. He didn't play last week. They're really banged up. You have to exploit it. And not just exploit it in the run game and doing some different things there. Bring back the jet sweep motion. Get those eyes moving. Bring all the motion pieces with it. And this needs to be a big game. This has got to be a tight end game, right? Where it's not just Luke Lachey, but we're seeing a lot of Addison Estrenga and really stretch what that defense has to do. LaShawn Williams is great at picking up blitzes and picking up blocks in passing downs. And that's why he's in there a ton on third downs, because he's good at that. How about we slip him out? How about we get the screen game going a little bit? These are the components I believe that Iowa needs to employ in order to be able to move the football against Iowa State. The defensive backfield, talk about that too. They're really good back there. The biggest strength of their team is the safety position. on the defensive side of the football. They got three guys that are all outstanding. Bo Frailer, who plays kind of the middle of that three safety look that they have. I think you're going to see him probably up in the box a lot more, at least early on, unless Iowa can show the ability to consistently throw the football. Verdon, he's a hard hitter. You're going to see some physicality there. Jeremiah Cooper had an interception a year ago, had three in the first two games last season. He's really, really good, and he's good with the ball in the air. That's a guy that you got to keep an eye on. And then their quarterback position has actually got a little bit of depth, too. Darian Porter, people on the east side of the state will probably remember him at Bettendorf. Big dude, 6'4". Remember watching him and calling a game with him in the semifinals at the Dome. He is a good athlete. You don't normally see 6'4" corners, but that's exactly what he is. I didn't think it was going to work. He moved from wide receiver over there. I was dead wrong. He was not just a special teams dynamo. He's turned himself into a solid cornerback. Miles Purchase also back out over there. You got Matthew Bess, who came in from JUCO, a guy that's got a lot of buzz. And maybe their best defensive player last week was John Tez Williams. So that's what you have. Overall, a solid defense. And their coordinator, John Haycock, is outstanding. Phil Parker, we love Phil Parker, right? But John Haycock is right up there as one of the best defensive minds in college football. Year after year, he's going to have teams that are going to be really good. They do different things. They scheme, they change, they adapt, and that's something to watch, certainly. Finish up with special teams. And this is a component where I think Iowa has a huge, huge advantage. So it'll be Kyle Conradi will be their kicker. This kid's never kicked a field goal before. He's a redshirt freshman. And now his first field goal opportunity, if he gets one, is going to be at Kinnick Stadium. A kid that grew up in Dubuque. I don't know his family background. From my buddies in Dubuque, though, not a whole lot of Cyclone fans over there. A few Notre Dame fans, sure. Got some Wisconsin people that don't know what's going on. Yeah, you got those. But that's Hawkeye country. And now he's at Iowa State. They really like him. I've heard nothing but positive things about him. Still, making your first collegiate field goal attempt, if it comes on Saturday at Kinnick Stadium, that's going to be different. Another weird component is Iowa State employed two punters. So they retired Tyler Perkins from a year ago. Really good. Really solid season a year ago. He was showing up on some watch lists and just a solid guy. And all of a sudden, Jace Gilbert, who was their kicker a couple years back and was just absolutely dreadful, he comes out there and kicks a couple of times. Weird. In the return game, they got a couple of guys. Jalen Knoll will be the one, as we talked about him, a wide receiver. Certainly he's made plays back there in the return game. But Caden Weechen's different, right? Weechen, you see the speed and, yes, the touchdown, but even the other two punts that he had. He is special, and that speed is special out there. You couple that with LeVar Woods and what he does every single time. What we saw in the bounce back from Drew Stevens, that was great to see. And I think there's going to be more that's going to come from Reese Dakin. I want to say it was probably a disappointing opener for Reese Dakin. Still, we've seen the powerful leg, and hopefully it shows up a time or two, and we get a couple of those monster bombs if need be. Now, what we hope more than anything is you don't need the punter, but let's live in reality. Finally, there's one other component, and that is the intangibles of this game, something that is always talked about in rivalry week, and normally feels like Iowa State has the intangibles. I'm not so sure that's the case. We'll talk about that when we come back. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast is brought to you by Game Time and the Game Time app. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite of live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different tickets. To find out all kinds of deals, what they have going on the app, just download the app. App has all kinds of great things out there that you can find for the game. Of course, if you're looking for tickets for Cy-Hawk Week, they got you covered there with the game at Kinnick Stadium. If you're looking for tickets to go on the road, NFL fan, you're looking for that even for the end of the regular season, they got you covered with a whole lot more and certainly some great deals up there as I took a peek right before we recorded today for Iowa State. I love the view from your seat, knowing exactly where you're going to be in Kinnick Stadium. I love that part of the app of what you're going to have. All in pricing. Also, when you flip this feature on, it's going to show the total upfront, no surprise fees at checkout. A huge component here. We know what those fees are and how they can add up. I just like to know going in exactly what I'm going to pay for my seat. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Once again, that is Locked On College. Terms apply. Create an account and use the redeem code Locked On College, LOCKEDON, COLLEGE. That'll get you $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Trent Condon back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast, our ultimate preview edition, getting ready for Iowa State. Yes, we like to throw the barbs at the Cyclone fans, right? Like to get under their skin. Maybe they're just that annoying guy in the office. Whatever it is, you like to do the little brother. Yeah, we do that. But it also leads to the motivation. And so many times recently, it's felt like motivation has been on the side for Iowa State. Go back a couple of years. Game day is there. Had the long weather delay. Iowa had to call and get some food that was delivered in those long delays that they had at Jack Trice, and they're still able to find a way to get the victory. Intangibles a lot of times have pointed to Iowa State. But I believe this week, with the return of Kirk Ferentz into the locker room, that's going to be special. Now, those motivational ploys, rematch, coming back and beating a team, those things I think are overrated once the ball is in the air. But listening to the guys earlier this week, I think this is a very confident group about what they are and what they have. What they did a week ago, I think, ignited the belief that this team has a chance to be really special. I think all those things are there. But most importantly, with Kirk back, these guys love Kirk Ferentz. They play hard for him. Talk to a current player, talk to a former player. They will tell you the same thing. It is incredibly rare for a guy that's been around for 26 years to have so many people that have not just nice things to say about it, glowing terms. That's Kirk Ferentz. How he has built this program, what he puts into it, the investment that he makes on these guys individually shows you what kind of person he is and what kind of football program he's created. And after the one-game suspension that I'm sure all the players, like all of us, roll our eyes at, just how ridiculous it was, I think that's going to add to a little bit of juice. Not just on the field, but getting ready for this game and being prepared. Look, Kirk's seen it all in this rivalry. He's been on the board. For a long time, it wasn't he couldn't beat him. And he couldn't early in his career. And then Iowa State had some success when they shouldn't have been having success. That ship has been righted. Kirk's program has played really well against Iowa State in a rivalry game, winning 8 of 10, winning 6 of the last 7. These things have tilted Iowa's direction. I think they're going to be ready to go. I think Iowa gets it done, and I think it's comfortable. I got the Hawkeyes winning this one 27-10 over Iowa State. Too much in the running game. I think McNamara makes the plays. The defense comes up with some big plays, and ultimately Iowa cruises into the victory. 27-10 Hawkeyes with the victory, and they will move to 2-0 on the season. Ultimate preview. Thanks for joining us as always here, Locked On Hawkeyes. We will be back with you on Saturday night. I will be on the pregame show on 600 WMT, the Bumper Brigade at Melrose and Melrose. You can stop on out. We'll be taking the air at about 11:30 on Saturday morning. Stop on by there. No, they got some giveaways going on. If you're out and about in your tailgating scene, I'll be there doing that. Looking forward to getting on the air, a little pregame action before Learfield and the Hawkeye Radio Network take over the airwaves. That'll be on 600 WMT. Or if you're going to be a late arriver to the game, make sure you flip us on that one. Of course, I'll be with you as well on my sports show across the state of Iowa on the Iowa Sports Radio Network, including our flagship 106.3 KXNO in Des Moines. My show from noon to tune, and we will be breaking down Iowa State on that one. You can also hear us on 800, there it is, KXIC in Iowa City, 95.7 in Cedar Rapids. We're also on in the Quad Cities and Sioux City, so you can find that show. It's called Miller and Condon. I'm the Condon part. My partner, Ken, he is the Miller part. You can hear us from noon to 2 on the Iowa Sports Radio Network, and we'll continue to break this down a whole lot more coming up later today. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Hey, don't forget, we got a lot more going on here on the Locked On Network. We got you covered with the NFL Week 1 upon us. Chiefs get the win on Thursday night. If you're a Chiefs fan, Packers, Bears, well, any team, We have you covered on that front. Your favorite Major League Baseball team, NBA, NHL, Locked On Big Ten, Locked On Bets, Locked On Fantasy Football. Yeah, we got it all on the Locked On Network. Speaking of Locked On College Football, Spencer's doing a great job there. And you can download the podcast for Locked On College Football right now in this feed. You can take a look right in the description. It's right there, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Spencer McLaughlin and Locked On College Football, and have you covered on that front. Spencer does a great job in that one as well. A lot going on here. Glad to have you aboard with us. Hit that subscribe button. Greatly appreciate it. We'll talk to you again after the game late on Saturday night. Let's get a Hawkeye victory. Go Hawks.